My wife cheated with my best friend while I worked. 70-hour week, so I took everything she owned and walked away without looking back. My wife cheated with my best friend. While I worked 70-hour weeks, so I took everything she owned and walked away without looking back. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I never thought my life would unravel this way. For as long as I can remember, I've been the type of person who puts everyone else first: family, friends, and, eventually, my wife. I work long hours, sometimes 70 a week, grinding through spreadsheets and meetings while thinking about how I'll make our little life feel secure. Stability was my love language, I guess. I thought showing up, paying the bills, keeping the apartment in order, and never complaining was enough. And for a while, it seemed like it was. Melissa is charming in a way that still makes my chest tighten. She has this smile that makes you forget everything else, and a laugh that fills a room. She's affectionate, social, and from the outside, she seems like the perfect partner. We were that couple people would casually comment on how balanced we looked, how in sync. I bought into it too, believed that if I kept showing up, kept keeping the lights on, she'd keep showing up too. So I did. I handled the bills, the groceries, the little household emergencies no one ever notices until they aren't handled. I worked my ass off so she could chase her dreams without worrying about money. And I thought that was love. Sometimes she'd sigh and say things like, "I feel so lonely when you're gone all the time," or, "Do you even notice me anymore?" I brushed it off. I told myself it was normal. Everyone gets busy. Everyone needs space. I didn't think too hard about it. I was proud of what I was doing. I thought I was building something strong, a partnership, a life that mattered. And yet, looking back, there were cracks I didn't notice. The way she'd glance at her phone when I wasn't around, the small pauses before she answered texts, little jokes about how I was always working or never home. I ignored them. I wanted to believe it was nothing, just the price of ambition, the sacrifices of adulthood. I went to bed that night feeling accomplished, proud even, thinking I was the kind of husband who had it all figured out. Little did I know, my world was already starting to tilt. Something was coming, something I couldn't see yet, and it was going to shatter everything I thought I knew. Over the next few months, I started noticing small changes that gnawed at me, but I kept brushing them off. Melissa laughed at jokes I didn't understand, stared at her phone a little too long, and sometimes canceled plans with a shrug that felt heavier than it should. I chalked it up to stress, to her needing space, to me working 70-hour weeks. I told myself I was overthinking it. I wanted to believe everything was fine, because the idea that it might not be, that was unbearable. "Are you even listening?" she'd ask sometimes, tilting her head, her voice soft but edged with frustration. "I'm talking to you, and you're somewhere else." I'd snap out of it, smile and nod, telling her I was just tired, just busy. I'd rub her back, try to squeeze in some affection. And she'd smile back, but there was a flicker in her eyes I couldn't place. I ignored it. I remember one evening walking through the apartment after a 12-hour day, the smell of takeout still lingering in the kitchen. The city lights outside were blurry through the rain-spattered windows, and I felt a pang of loneliness I didn't want to admit. Melissa was scrolling through her phone on the couch, smiling at something I couldn't see. I plopped down beside her. "Busy day?" I asked, and she muttered something about how she'd just been catching up. Catching up with who? I didn't ask. I forced a laugh and changed the subject. It wasn't that I didn't trust Hy did, blindly, but slowly the pieces were shifting without me realizing. The warmth that used to fill the apartment was thinner now, replaced with this subtle tension I couldn't shake. I told myself it was nothing. I wanted it to be nothing, because if it wasn't, I didn't know if I could bear the truth. That night, I lay in bed, listening to the hum of the heater and the distant traffic, pretending to sleep. But I couldn't. A knot had formed in my stomach, one I couldn't ignore, even if I tried. Something was off, and I had no idea how deep it went. It was subtle at first, almost imperceptible, but I started noticing patterns that didn't add up. Melissa and Jake, my best friend since college, started showing up in the same places at the same time, laughing at jokes I wasn't in on. I caught fleeting glances, smirks that vanished when I entered the room. My chest would tighten, but I'd force myself to shake it off. I'm imagining things. It's nothing. I kept telling myself that over and over. One evening, I came home earlier than usual. The apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your stomach ache. I found Melissa on the couch, phone in hand, laughing softly at something. She didn't look up when I walked in. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag by the door. She glanced up, a flicker of surprise crossing her face, and then she smiled. "Didn't hear you come in," she said, brushing it off. "I wanted to ask, what are you smiling at?" But I held back. There was a moment, a pause, a weight in the air that I couldn't name. Later that night, I was scrolling through my own phone, pretending to check emails, but I couldn't stop thinking about her laughter. About the way Jake had been oddly quiet during our last dinner together. Too quiet for someone who usually dominated the conversation. A week later, I noticed the texts. Little notifications popping up when she thought I wasn't looking. Names I didn't recognize. Emojis I didn't recognize. It made my hand shake a little, but I still convinced myself I was overreacting. She's just talking to friends. She loves me. We've been together too long for this to matter, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing fast. I couldn't ignore the creeping suspicion, no matter how hard I tried. Every laugh, every glance, every phone buzz started feeling like a clue to something I wasn't ready to see. My life was starting to feel like a puzzle with pieces I didn't have, and I had no idea that those missing pieces were about to crash down on me in a way I could never have imagined. And yet, I still went to bed that night, telling myself I was imagining things, unaware that the truth was closer than I dared to think. By this point, I was practically living at work. 70-hour weeks had become my normal, and I told myself it was worth what I was providing. I was keeping everything together. The apartment was quiet when I got home, and I liked to think it was peaceful. But there was a growing emptiness that I couldn't name, a distance I couldn't ignore. Melissa was there physically, but emotionally. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home. "Did you even eat today?" she asked one night, sliding a plate of leftovers toward me. I shook my head. "No, just grabbed something on the way back. You know how it is." She didn't respond, just smiled faintly and turned her attention back to her phone. That small gesture, the way she barely looked at me, hit harder than I expected. I forced a laugh and dug in, trying to ignore the knot in my chest. Every little interaction started to feel off. A glance that lingered too long at her phone, a whisper of laughter that I didn't hear the whole context of, or the sudden tension when Jake was mentioned casually. My mind raced. Is it nothing? Am I just tired? I wanted so badly to believe the simple explanation, to hold on to the version of my marriage where trust was unshakable. The smell of takeout on the counter, the hum of the fridge at night, the faint buzz of city traffic outside, a lot of it seemed sharper, colder somehow. I would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until I could sleep. Trying to ignore the whispering doubts growing louder in my head, I still told myself I was imagining things. I clung to the notion that our life was just busy, that distance was natural. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That subtle, almost invisible tension, the one I tried so hard to dismiss, wasn't going anywhere. It was waning, lurking, ready to hit me in a way I never could have prepared for. And I had no idea just how fast the world I thought I knew was about to crumble. I still remember the exact moment everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday evening. I had stayed late at the office, buried in spreadsheets and client calls. And when I finally walked in the door, the apartment was quiet to quiet. My stomach sank instantly. I dropped my bag, calling out, "Melissa." No response. The faint glow of her phone lit up the couch. My heart sank as I saw a string of messages on the screen, all from Jake. I froze. My chest tightened so much, it felt like it was about to explode. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Laughter, inside jokes, flirty emojis, messages I never thought I'd read from my best friend and my wife. My hand shook, my vision blurred, and for a few terrifying moments, I thought I might be imagining it. But it was all there, in black and white. The betrayal wasn't subtle anymore. It was right in front of me. Melissa walked into the kitchen then, holding a glass of water, smiling faintly. "Hey, you're home early," she said, like nothing had changed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Every moment of trust, every hour I'd worked myself into exhaustion, every sacrifice, I felt it all crumble. What is this?" My voice cracked, barely audible. She froze. Then her eyes darted to Jake's name on the screen. "It's not what it looks like," she stammered, but I couldn't listen. Not what it looks like. I had always believed in honesty. I had always believed that love meant trust, that loyalty was mutual. Now I realized I had been living in a lie. Blind to the truth that had been unfolding under my nose, I sank into the couch, feeling hollow, like someone had ripped out the core of me. The apartment, once my sanctuary, now felt like a cage. The hum of the fridge, the faint buzz of traffic, even the smell of her perfume, all mocked me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to make them feel even a fraction of what I felt. But instead, I sat there, paralyzed, staring at the messages, knowing one thing with terrifying clarity: nothing would ever be the same. And in that moment, I realized the world I had built my life, my marriage, my trust was gone. The days after I discovered the messages were a blur. I went to work, answered emails, sat in meetings, and pretended like nothing had changed. But inside, everything had shifted. Every laugh, every casual smile, every good morning from Melissa felt like a knife twisting. I couldn't eat properly, I couldn't sleep, and when I did, I dreamed of betrayal Jake's face, Melissa's laugh, their hands brushing, their smiles at each other. "Are you okay?" a coworker asked one afternoon. I nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired." Tired wasn't the word. I was shattered. Every hour I spent working to secure our life suddenly felt meaningless, wasted on a marriage that wasn't real, a friendship that had been a lie. I thought I knew these people, trusted them, and now I realized I didn't know anything at all. At home, Melissa acted like nothing had happened. She would hum while cooking, scroll through her phone, and casually mention things I hadn't noticed before. "I met Jake for coffee yesterday," she said one evening, as if it were completely normal. I stared at her, heart pounding, but said nothing. I didn't know if I wanted to explode or disappear. The apartment that had once felt like a home now felt alien. The hum of the fridge, the soft glow of the living room lamp, the faint smell of her perfume, all reminded me of the betrayal that had invaded every corner of my life. I'd built a world for us, and it had been ripped apart without warning. I tried to talk to someone, anyone, but explaining this felt impossible. Friends offered empty reassurances. "You'll get through it. It's not the end of the world." But they didn't understand the depth of it. The raw ache of knowing the people I trusted most had chosen each other over me. I would sit on the couch at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling hollow and furious at the same time. I was drowning in emotions I couldn't process, yet I knew I had to find a way forward. Something inside me whispered that I wasn't done, that this story wasn't over, and that the betrayal I had uncovered was only the beginning. I realized that sitting in anger wasn't going to change anything. I couldn't undo what Melissa and Jake had done, but I could take control of the one thing that was still mine, myself and the life I had built. So I started planning. Slowly, methodically, I documented everything: sexts, emails, strange receipts, small inconsistencies. I kept quiet, kept working, kept pretending nothing had happened. Every day, I observed them, noting their patterns, memorizing their routines. Melissa would text late at night. Jake would respond too quickly, too casually. Every little detail I recorded felt like collecting ammunition, a way to turn my pain into power. I didn't want revenge in the heat of moment sense. I wanted precision. I wanted control. I wanted to make sure that when I acted, I did so with the clarity of someone who had been burned but refused to be destroyed. I started tightening control over finances, subtly checking accounts, moving assets where she wouldn't have immediate access. One researched legal options, just in case. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction in reclaiming this little bit of autonomy. Every move, every quiet observation was like regaining a piece of the dignity I thought I had lost. I would smile, make small talk, laugh at jokes, and help around the apartment. Melissa had no idea I was quietly dismantling the safety net she had taken for granted. There was a thrill in the quiet tension, the unspoken knowledge that I had seen behind the curtain and was preparing for my own stage. But at the same time, the ache hadn't gone away. I still felt hollow, betrayed, and furious. My friends noticed a coldness in me, a distance that wasn't there before. And yet, despite the anger, a part of me felt alive in a way I hadn't for weeks. I was no longer entirely a victim. I was planning. I was calculating. I was ready, and deep down, I knew the day would come when Melissa and Jake would realize that. I wasn't the same man they thought I was, and that everything they had taken for granted would soon belong to me again. I had learned to walk the line between calm and fury. Melissa and Jake had no idea I knew the full extent of their betrayal, and I intended to keep it that way for now. I started testing boundaries, dropping subtle questions that weren't really questions. "Oh, you two hung out again yesterday," I'd ask casually, like it was nothing. Melissa would flush, her smile faltering for just a second before she recovered. Jake's presence in the apartment, usually casual and relaxed, now seemed tense. Careful, it was a strange kind of power, watching them squirm without saying much. I didn't lash out. I didn't accuse. I just observed, and every hesitation, every nervous glance, every faltering sentence felt like proof that my knowledge had shaken their world as much as theirs had shaken mine. I also tightened my control over the finances, quietly moving money and securing the things that were truly mine. Melissa had assumed that everything in our life was hers to access, that my work, my sacrifices, my time were just part of the package. She had no idea I had been preparing, quietly reclaiming the power she thought she had. At night, the apartment felt different. The hum of the heater, the faint aroma of Melissa's perfume, even the soft glow of her laptop in the living room, all of it carried a tension I hadn't noticed before. It was electric, charged like the calm before a storm. I knew the moment would come when I would no longer need to observe, when I could act, and I relished the quiet anticipation. Even so, the emotional weight remained. I felt hollow, angry, and exhausted, but I also felt alive in a way I hadn't since the betrayal. I had the upper hand now because I had confronted them, but because I was the only one who knew the truth. And every night, lying in bed, I whispered to myself, just barely audible, "The day they realize I'm in control is coming, and when it does, nothing will ever be the same." It hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. Despite all the planning, all the control, there were moments when the betrayal still crushed me. One night I came home earlier than usual, exhausted, and found them laughing together on the couch, Melissa and Jake. My best friend, shoulder to shoulder, like nothing had changed. The sight punched through the armor I'd built around myself. My stomach sank, my throat tightened, and I felt a hollow rage I hadn't known I was capable of. I retreated to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make them feel the weight of what they had done. But I didn't. I just sat there, trembling. The apartment buzzing softly around me. Every sound amplified, the fridge humming, the faint city traffic outside, the soft tap of Melissa's laughter drifting down the hall. It felt like my world was shrinking, suffocating me. I tried calling my friends, needing someone, anyone, to anchor me, but I couldn't explain the depth of it. "You'll get through it," they said. Easy for them to say. They didn't feel the knife of betrayal twisting in my chest, didn't see the life I had built crumble in silence. I felt utterly alone. I wandered the apartment, the living room light casting long shadows across the floor. The smell of takeout lingered from the night before, clashing with the faint scent of her perfume. Everything that had once felt familiar now felt alien, hostile even. I realized in that moment that I had lost something far bigger than money or time. I had lost trust. I had lost the people I thought I could rely on, and for the first time, I let myself feel the full weight of it, the exhaustion, the anger, the grief. I sat there staring at the couch where they had been together, knowing that my life had changed forever. The pain was raw, overwhelming, and almost unbearable. But beneath the despair, a single, stubborn thought surfaced. I wasn't done. Not yet. And when the time came, they would see that what they had taken from me could never truly break me. I didn't storm in screaming. I didn't throw anything. I didn't need to. I had waited, watched, and planned long enough to know that patience was my most powerful weapon. The day I confronted them, I stayed calm, measured, almost unnervingly casual. Melissa was folding laundry in the living room when I walked in, and Jake was leaning against the kitchen counter, pretending to be relaxed. "Hey," I said, voice steady, no tremor in it. "Can we talk?" Melissa froze. Jake's smile faltered. That split-second hesitation, just a flicker, was all I needed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I let them stew in it while I laid out everything I knew, step by step. The texts. The late-night calls. The little lies that added up to the biggest betrayal of my life. I watched Melissa's hands tremble as she set down the laundry. Jake's jaw tightened, his casual facade crumbling. "It's over," I said finally, soft but firm, and it was never going to work again. "I've covered bills, secured finances, and made sure that everything you thought you could take, you can't." Melissa opened her mouth, probably to protest, to beg, to deflect, but I didn't let her. I just looked at them both, calm, collected, and deadly serious. "You made your choices, I made mine, and the difference is, I'm not broken." For the first time in weeks, the air in the apartment felt electric, charged. The power dynamic had shifted. They had underestimated me, assumed that anger would make me irrational, that pain would make me weak. But I had been methodical, calculating, and now the tables were turned. I walked away from them that evening, leaving the apartment and the silence behind. I didn't yell. I didn't slam doors. I didn't make a scene. I simply stepped into my car, turned the key, and drove into the night, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: control. And in that quiet, still night, I knew that the people who had betrayed me would remember this moment forever and that I had finally reclaimed my life. After that confrontation, I felt lighter, almost unrecognizable. The tension that had clawed at me for months was finally giving way to something else: clarity, control, and a strange kind of satisfaction. I began reclaiming what was mine, not out of spite, but because I had earned it, built it, and worked for it. Every possession, every asset, every little thing I had put into our life that Melissa had assumed she had access to, I quietly secured. I remember walking through the apartment, cataloging things, moving items to places she couldn't reach, transferring accounts I had once shared. The smell of fresh coffee in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator, even the city lights filtering through the windows, it all felt different now. It felt like my space again. I could breathe in it finally, without the invisible weight of betrayal pressing down on me. Melissa and Jake realized what was happening only slowly. Their casual, mocking confidence started to crumble as they noticed locked accounts, changed passwords, and missing items. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The look on their faces was enough. The quiet, controlled shift in power was far more satisfying than any outburst I could have staged. I spent a lot of time reflecting during this period, alone in the apartment at night, staring out at the city. The betrayal still hurt, of course. It still left scars, subtle but deep. But I had learned something invaluable. My worth wasn't tied to anyone else's actions, and no one could strip me of the dignity I refused to surrender. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I wasn't free from pain, but I was free from their control. Every decision I made, every careful step I took, was a reminder that I had the power to rebuild my life on my own terms. And as I sat on the couch, the faint city hum in the background, I realized something else. This was only the beginning. My life was mine again, and nothing they did could ever take that away. Walking away that final time was surreal. The apartment behind me, the quiet of the night surrounding me, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe even years. I didn't take revenge in a messy, dramatic way. I didn't humiliate anyone or scream. I simply reclaimed my life step by step, decision by decision. And in that reclamation, I found something I hadn't realized I'd been missing: peace. Melissa and Jake faded from my life the way shadows do when the sun rises. Friends and family noticed a change in me, not bitterness, not anger, but calm, resolute strength. I stopped second-guessing myself, stopped questioning my worth because of their betrayal. Every moment I had spent building, sacrificing, and trusting was mine to own again, untainted by their deceit. I started rebuilding, slowly. My routines, my home, my finances, everything was organized on my terms. I felt empowered by the fact that I had navigated months of heartbreak, deception, and emotional manipulation without losing myself, and the satisfaction wasn't in taking something from them. It was in standing tall, intact, and knowing I had survived and thrived despite their betrayal. Sometimes I think back to the early days, those long hours, the subtle glances, the little laughs behind my back, and I realize something. Those moments taught me boundaries, patience, and the importance of self-respect. They taught me that even when the people you love most turn against you, you can still find a way to rise above it. As I sit in my apartment now, the hum of the city outside mixing with the quiet of my own space, I feel something I never expected. Gratitude. Gratitude that I survived, that I reclaimed control, and that I can look back on this chapter without bitterness. I lost trust, yes. I lost innocence, too. But I didn't lose myself, and that, in the end, is everything. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm truly free.